Well, good morning, YouTube. This is Captain Dave's Sport Fishing YouTube channel. And this is going to be an installment of Wolf Tales. And what I do during Wolf Tales is I tell you some stories from my 23 years of charter fishing in Jacksonville, Florida. And this video is going to be by subscriber request. I get a lot of requests. And this has been more than once somebody has asked me, Dave, what has been your best day or your worst day? And what we're going to do today is I'm going to tell you the story about the worst day that I've probably ever had in my entire charter fishing career. Alright, well, as I said, by subscriber request, I am going to tell you a story about my worst day. I mean, I'd categorize this as a worst day. It is the summertime. It is hot. It's just like it is right now. This time of year in Jacksonville, Florida, it's very hot. By noon, 12, 1 o'clock, it can be brutal. This is back before I even had my boat that I have now. So you can tell then I've had the aluminum welded plate JETTYWOLF for going on 13 years. So this was actually in my old boat, which was a 23-foot Maycraft center console. I didn't have a T-top on it at this time. And me and a guy that I will call Jim, we went out for a day of tarpon fishing. I used to do quite a bit of tarpon fishing. It's not a lot of catching, but it's a lot of fishing. And we went out double teaming with myself and a friend of mine in one of my old bay boats. He bought it. My old buddy, Capt, my sea daddy. Guy done forgot more about fishing than what most people will ever know. He was probably, what, a 45-year commercial fisherman. He had 3 young guys with him on his charter trip. I had one guy. We'll call him Jim. Jim was a big fella, probably about 6'4", probably pushing at least 300 plus pounds. I mean, he was just a big dude. First thing we did is we went outside the inlet and we caught bait throwing cast net. We caught pogies throwing cast nets on pogie schools. They were thick, right outside the North Jetty. And it was pretty easy. So I threw my net. We got plenty of bait. Then Randall and I, because I remember back then we were having, this was probably in July, which is coming up now here shortly. We were having some kind of thermocline problem, as we always do here in Bizarro World, Florida. In the middle of the summer, we get many times so much west wind or something that it pushes all the water out, and what's replacing it? A lot of cold water. So there really wasn't much tarpon fishing to be had unless you went to some certain places. So what we did is we ran north up the beach, shot in another inlet, and then ran up that inlet's river up into sort of a dead-end cove kind of area, up in probably, 10, 15, 20 foot of water that was an offshoot of a river, a saltwater, marshy river. And it was sort of, I say it was kind of a dead-end cove because on the far end of it, it was just really shallow sandbars. So we sat out basically at the mouth of it where we've scoped it out before and saw on the last of the falling tide lots and lots of tarpon rolling. That's how we see them around here. We'll see them rolling. That's how you know they're there. And then on the last of the fallen tide, of course, all the bait is flushing out and these tarpon get on the feed bag. Well, I went up there with Jim. I went to my area, and my old buddy Randall went with his guys to another area, but not far away. I'm talking, he probably wasn't a quarter to a half mile away from us. Well, stereotypically with tarpon fishing around here, tarpon is many times the bycatch of first catching sharks. So we got all these Menhaden, bunker for you dudes up north, pogies, what we call in the south. I got fish basket full of them. I had a chummer like I have on the back of my boat now. I had a Dennis Braid chum mate. I'm pouring the pogies in there, and we're mashing them up. We're cutting little pieces, and I'm either going to fish them live, dead, or pieces. And we got 2 lines out the back of the boat. Ran through a few smaller sharks, nothing too big, maybe 4-foot sharks. And then we look behind the boat, and here comes the tarpon. They start coming into your chum line, and they start feeding. You see them rolling. So then caught a few, these 4-foot smaller sharks. Was no big deal. That was just a warm up. Next thing you know, got about maybe a 70, 80 pound tarpon on. It takes off. It's jumping. It's doing backflips. He wanted one of these. He came all the way down here from up north. He wanted this tarpon, man. He was so into it. He's pulling it in. We're fighting it. And I'm using usually breakaway sinkers because we're fishing in big-time current still. Breakaway sinkers on the bottom, and then probably about a 3 to 4 foot real heavy mono leader. And I believe that day we were using about a 7/0 Eagle Claw circle hook. Well, he gets the fish right up to the boat. He's having a good time. Everything's great, except while he was fighting the fish, he's gritting his teeth and everything. And I see him go, he's fighting the fish, and goes like this, and pulls out a half a tooth. And I'm like, what? Jim, what's up with that? He says, I was supposed to go to the dentist today because I got hit in the face with a football, baseball, some kind of ball, and it chipped his front tooth. And while he's gritting his teeth and everything, it came loose, so he just pulled it out. And he stuck it in his pocket. And he's like spitting blood and everything. I'm like, God dang. But, okay, that sort of came to a conclusion there, and we get the fish up to the I'll never forget it, it was the port corner of the stern of the boat. And he's got the line running over my head, and the fish comes up, does a triple gainer with a little gainish twist right off the corner of the boat. And I grab the leader as the fish comes up, and I grab the leader, and we both look, and a circle hook made a big waller hole right in his mouth. And we could see, as soon as he came down, the hook fell out of his mouth, and the fish, baboosh, splashed in the water. But that IGFA rules, I got my hand on the leader. So Jim caught this fish. No problem. All right. Everything is great. High five. Got him. Okay? Very successful. By now it's probably 10:30, maybe 11 in the morning. Next thing I know, Jim was getting real hot. He had on like he had shorts on and like a Columbia fishing shirt or whatever. So we did a couple of these sharks, did go toe-to-toe with this tarpon. And tarpon are, they're going to put you to the test. Don't matter how big they are. I mean, they can be this big on light tackle, and they're going to put you to a test. It was getting kind of really, really, really hot. And so I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? He says, that's it for me. I'm done. I got my fish. And I said, okay, well, go ahead, sit up front, open your shirt, because, it was hot as hell. And I pulled the anchor, and we're running down, going back home via the Intercoastal Waterway. I ran up the ocean and went in this inlet. Now we're going to take it easy, and we're just going to run down the Intercoastal Waterway back to Mayport, where we left from. I had a console seat in the front of my console, and then I had a giant coffin box cooler. So he had his feet up on the cooler, and he's sitting there just like I'm sitting right here. And he was drinking a Dr. Pepper. And we're running along, and my console on this boat was really big. It was really tall. I don't know, he dropped his Dr. Pepper or something, and it rolled down the side of the console, and I go, hey, Jim, you dropped your Dr. Pepper. I'm like yelling because of the wind noise and everything. And he didn't say anything. So I slow down, and there's all these docks here, and I'm running down. So I pull away from the docks. Now, granted, we're still fishing pretty raging current, even in this other river that I was fishing in. And I pull away from the docks. I swing around my console, and Jim is sitting there like this. Eyes rolled back in his head, mouth open, kind of tongue out. Well, immediately I thought he was having some kind of seizure. But at the same time, when I turned and we're drifting, my own wake hit me, and he's sitting there like this. And my wake kicked the boat, and he went to go falling off the front of my console seat, and I grabbed his shirt. And I thought, oh my God, he's having a seizure or something. So I put my hand around the back of his head, and I went with him because we both fell off of the seat. Big dude, what am I going to do? I'm just going to hang on and go for the ride on the way to the deck. So he falls down off the deck, and I try to protect his head. Well, since I'm laying on top of him at that moment, I'm not hearing no breathing, no nothing. And I remember it almost ripped his shirt open. So I get up and I grab, back then, the greatest thing in the world was Nextel Direct Connect. Remember those Nextel phones where you just went beep beep and you had somebody's name plugged in, or their number kind of plugged into your phone? Well, I grabbed my phone and I actually yelled to Randall, because Randall and I were chit-chatting back and forth, so Randall's number's right there on my phone. And I went, Randall, call 911, call 911. Well, let me tell you, Randall was on the ball. This guy was, I can't say enough about Randall. He's no longer with us. He died of pancreatic cancer several years ago, and it was a big loss for everybody. But he called 911. I got up behind the console. He says, go to the saw pit boat ramp. Go to the saw pit boat ramp. EMTs on their way. Man, I was like 3 miles from the saw pit boat ramp. I got up on plane. I'm screaming down this waterway. I cut a turn, and then I have to literally, most of the time, go around a big U-turn to stay in deep water. You got to remember, it's low tide. I go right across a sandbar, and I look behind me because the boat goes, and the rooster tail of mud and sand I threw out the back of the boat was like 100 feet long. I spun into the deeper water, came up to this dock, slid right up to it, look up at the top of the boat ramp, and here comes EMTs. Here comes a park guard. Here comes, I think, like a woman police officer. There was like, between me and them, there was like 7 of us. They come flying down a big ramp, walking ramp down to, I don't even know if it was a floating dock. Maybe it was a floating dock but still it was up in the air. jump on my boat. What happened? And I tell them exactly what happened. They rip his shirt off. They start putting those tabs all over his chest. They put a pipe down his throat. They're sticking stuff all over his arms. And all I can tell you is I remember the machine that they used talked. And it kept saying, like, no need to zap them. You know, that whatever they, defibrillator or whatever they call it. No need to zap them or whatever, in, you know, medical terms. And I'm standing there and I'm like, oh my God. And I mean, I had a 200 plus quart coffin box cooler. We had to, I mean, it's full of ice there. We had to mash that out of the bow of my boat. There's my console. It was this way, laying this way towards the bow, long ways. We had to mash that up on its side, okay, in between my console and the side of the boat. Everything got just thrown to the back of the boat. I got all these people on the boat trying to do whatever they could to them. Then they slid the backboard on it, slid him over, and took all 7 of us to pick this man dead weight up and put him on a rolling gurney type thing. And then we had to push him up this steep ramp to get into the parking lot. So we do all that, and I'm telling you, it's 110 degrees in the dang shade. And I remember, I mean, all I can remember is everybody was fast, everybody knew what to do, and they slid him into the back of the ambulance and slammed those doors, and the guy, I'm standing on like the rear wheels of the ambulance standing there, and everybody else kind of milling around, and we just let go of him and let the 2 paramedics, you know, slide him into the back of the ambulance, and the guy shuts the doors and turns, and I'm standing right there, and I said, what happened to him? Is Jim dead? And the guy said to me, he says, we're going to see if what we can do. And he flips me a card and says, call here for information when we get there. I look at a card and it's like, you know, the nearest hospital emergency room or something like that. So needless to say, Jim died. He had a massive heart attack or whatever you call it. Massive heart attack right after catching that tarpon. He said, you know, it had the tooth. He said, oh, I'm so hot. I'm tired. That fish wore me out. That fish wore me out. I didn't know what to do, man. I just, like, walked down the parking lot. I got in the boat, pushed the cooler back, straightened everything up. Everybody left. They took that. They ripped out of that parking lot with their lights and sirens going. And Randall and the 3 young guys pull up. Randall says, what happened? And I said, Jim died. Jim died from catching that tarpon. So we bantered back and forth a little bit, and Randall, I don't believe he got a tarpon. I think they hooked like 2 and lost both of them. So his guys were kind of stoked. He had three 20-something-year-olds on his boat. And then I headed down the Intercoastal. Randall took off. I headed down the Intercoastal by myself, sitting up on my leaning post, just cruising along, and I just didn't even know what to think. I had no idea what to think. So I called my dad. He was at work. And I said to him, I said, you know, Jim just died, I believe, catching a tarpon. So I get back to the boat ramp, and I put the boat on the trailer, and I was running out of my cell phone, real cell phones back then that had real purpose. And the battery was dying. The Nextel Direct Connect wasn't, you know, being able to do anything. So I ran, after I put the boat on the trailer, I went back to the bait shop. I called the number on the card that he gave me. And when I first called, I get some nurse or something in the emergency room. And I asked, you know, is Jim, whatever his last name was, I said, did they just bring in a guy named Jim? And I said, real big guy. And they said, yeah. Yeah, he just came in. And the nurse says, are you next to kin? Are you his relatives or whatever? And I said, no, he was fishing with me. She says, well, we can't give out any information to you. I'm like, what? So I hang up. I'm using the bait shop's landline. I put the phone back in the cradle because it was one of those mobile phones. I walk in to the cooler room. I grabbed some Gatorades or something and just chugged them. And I came back out and picked the phone up again and walked outside, and I called again. And another nurse answered, or somebody answered the phone, and actually handed the phone to the ER doctor. And I spoke to the ER doctor. And she said, don't worry about anything. There was nothing you could do. You got him to, the paramedics or EMTs or whatever within minutes. I mean, it literally was from when we both fell off the seat. Right then, it was literally like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe. All I wanted to do is get him. And I mean, I couldn't believe how fast the ambulance got there. Because where we were fishing, just down the road is a fire station. Just down the road, And Randall responded really fast. I didn't have, he could sense the urgency in my voice. So when I talked to this ER doctor, she said, you did everything you could. You did good. We examined him. And I remember her exact words, what is your relation and what, whatever. And I said, I was his fishing guide. I said, he was out on my boat and he caught a tarpon and some sharks. And she said, well, he was stressed enough. And she said something about, don't worry, because she just kind of, just said this. This could have happened to him while I was sitting at home tonight eating dinner. I don't know what that means, but that means he had, obviously, a chronic problem. A couple months passed. Well, actually, like a week passed. Everybody heard the story. Everybody heard the story. I got a few nicknames out of it. A friend of mine, that is still a friend of mine today, believe it or not, said, hey, yeah, fishing with Dave is he's like Captain Kevorkian. I mean, I had to hear all kinds of stuff, but it took me a few weeks to get really over it, because it was pretty traumatized, but everything had to move fast, and everything did happen fast. That was pretty much it. That was the request. What is the worst day you ever had? I've got multiple worst days, bad days, multiples. So that's one of them. And all I can say is thanks for watching, and I hope you, I'm not going to say hope you enjoyed hearing about something like that, but there's other stories that I have, and I'll continue on with some requests. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. I don't know. People say give it a thumbs up, right? Oh well. But that was my worst day on the water. Almost. That's one of the worst days. So thanks for asking, and I'll try to get more requests in between all the days that are up here. And I'll see you on the next Wolf Tales.